Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Friend Stack here, and welcome to finally to the second Dance of Dragons. Now, this has been an absolute pain to set up. I won't deny it. It's been a right pain. For some annoying reason, so you know when you split up when you start a civil war breaks out, and the different realms sort of go split up into their own independent theaters and whatnot. For some reason, that's not working. The game just refuses to do it at all. So I'm left with no other choice but to just roll with it as it is and let the Iron Throne control all of the Stormlands, Reach, and Dawn by itself and other places. It seems the only way to really do it at this point. So, which yeah, it's a right bloody pain. I don't know why it's broken. I did have a quick check to see if I was to load up any other saves and stuff like that and see if that'll work. I don't know why it's gone like that. I don't know really. It's all very strange, really. You think it'd be fine because I've never had the issue before where the games refuse to split up into the Civil War thing. I even have it. Look, I'll show you. I even have it turned on. If I go down here, see Mega Wars. Mega Wars will occur when the Emperor tier ruler goes to war. The realm practices and the great houses must decide whether to support the Empire, the Rebellion, strike out on their own, or to stay neutral and bide their time. See, it's turned on, and for some reason it just isn't working. We've I think about 10 or so years ago in game, we had a few rebellions before that you may remember that the game sort of split up again. Of course, there are some times where it doesn't, but I'm thinking that's just if there's a civil war going on in the faction, but it's still part of the Iron Throne. It's a little. I've noticed some instances where like say the North for some reason has just stayed part of the Iron Throne. Usually, if it's usually if they're in a war or something and it's still ongoing, that's the only reason that I've ever seen that happen. But for some reason, it's just broken. It's completely broken, and I'm left with no choice but to do it like this, I'm afraid. Which bloody well sucks. I'm not fucking happy about it, I'm not gonna lie. no word of a lie, I'm not happy about it. The only way I've got the Trident, the Lannisters, not Lannisters, the Westerlands, Iron Isles, Vale of Arryn, Vale of Sunderland, I suppose, the Vale, the North, and the Beyond the Wall to join in the Rebellion is by doing the actual faction thing. So what I had to do is to set it up by the faction, which I had to cheat to make sure some people actually stay in the faction, and then do it that way, which is a fucking pain. One change that I didn't really plan to do is that Aegon is dead, the Prince of Dragonstone. He's dead, because for some fucking reason it put Aegon and Aeron into a truce. For some bloody, I don't know. Oh, I think I know. No, I don't think they've been at war, have they? I don't think they've attacked each other at all. No, so I don't understand that. But yeah, for some reason they put them both in the truce, and the only way I could do it is by killing one of them. So I made a decision to kill off Aegon, and I'm going to explain how that's all happened. This opening bit today will be me explaining how what's going on, the story and whatnot, and then I'll get on to the actual Civil War itself and actually playing it. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. Right, where do we start? Now, we have, when we left off, it was a couple months, wasn't it, I think? Or did I skip ahead a bit more? I know we had to, skip ahead. We had to jump forward a bit to give people certain time to tame certain dragons and whatnot. So, I know we had to, go forward a bit, which is a bit of a pain. I'm pretty sure the sound is on. I've just got to turn the music off, I think. Yeah, because I can hear it. Yeah, I can hear the sound. Yeah, that's fine. A couple other announcements. As some of you are, why am I doing this? Because this video is going to be by the time this is out, that poll would have been over ages ago. But I mean, if you didn't notice it, there was a poll a while ago. By the time you're watching this, for a games vote. So if you are interested in voting for games and vote on that, might be a bit late, but I suppose any vote is welcome, I suppose. Even though it's completely redundant at this stage, but there you go. What was I going to say? Oh yes, I'm going down to 2 series a week. So what that'll mean is that the Targaryen Dynasty and Mud Dynasty will run alongside each other for the time being. And eventually, say if the Mud Dynasty ends, and you'll just have more of the Targaryen Dynasty. And eventually, when the series, these two CK2 series wrap up, there'll be a new CK2 series which has been voted for. As of right now, it is on. We're going to be playing in the Crown Dragon start date. Centered in Westeros as probably one of the High Lords. It's not far off pushing over the boundary for a custom house or landness or baroness sort of thing. Mainly a custom house, really. So that could possibly change to a custom house, but if not, it'll probably just be a High Lord with one of the houses in Westeros. What that house will be, I don't know. I'm going to decide myself. Someone did point out the Valyrians would be a good choice, and Valyrians during is it Jaehaerys? No. Who was the guy that was with Lord Daemon? No, he died before. No, I think he died during the fight. And Aegon, because you had oh no, I think it was Daemon the Second. Was it? No, because I remember yeah, it was Daemon the First. Yeah, it was him, but he died. I think he died during the war, actually. And then Corlys, his son, became the first Lord Commander of the King's Guard. So yeah, someone pointed out the Valyrians. Did someone point out someone else? Oh yes, Horus, which was a house that controlled the Harrenhal after it was destroyed and given to them by Aegon. So yeah, maybe we might play as them. I'm not really sure. I did like the idea of playing perhaps as the Tarleys, or the Hightowers, or the Red Wains. Maybe as the Rains and trying to reclaim that ancestral sword, which they still haven't got in this scenario. Actually, I think don't House Drum still hold it? I think. Or are they dead? No, they're dead. Who the hell holds Red Rain in out of interest? No, one of the Greyjoys, who also carries Nightfall too. Okay. So yeah, that's happening. So yeah, also in regards to what will happen with like the other games I'm doing, by the time you're watching this, you'll be well aware that I've ended off the War for Cybertron series. And so now what will happen, you'll just get more of the Assassin's Creed Black Flag Let's Play. And then eventually that'll carry on. I may take a few pauses. I mean, if I do like a little hiatus in the series, and what I do is I'll start the next one after that. Possibly. So maybe we like finish like the main game of Black Flag. Then what I'll do is I might play the whatever this game wins the next vote. Hello, Bella. My cat's turned up. Probably wondering who I'm talking to. Hello. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So, we're going to be doing the... so, yeah. Whatever wins this next gaming vote will be what we do after Black Flag. So, I might do it where I finish Black Flag. I may do a vote later down the line where we decide what DLCs we play. Well, because there's two. Well, technically it's 3 if you count the island expansions. But I'll probably just do that in a single... during the main game, really. I don't think I'll split them into separate, because it's only like the additional places you can explore as Edward. I know your 2 DLCs is Abilene, the Abilene mission, which is probably something I could bang out in a single sitting, although I may spread it out because it's quite a short series, so I just might spread it out perhaps. And then we got the Freedom Cry DLC with Adewale, which I could possibly leave as a vote, but I probably wouldn't want to do it all together, really. So, yeah. Right, on to the actual video itself. Let's go over the history. This is going to be... You will see some spoilers, but... Right, okay, where do we start? So after we left off, and I guess we're sort of carrying sort of where we left off, kind of. So, yeah, Jaehaerys' health was... he planned to host a feast for Jaehaerys and... Who is it? You're going to see some spoilers straight away, and I'm going to explain all this, don't worry. Rhaena. As you can see, that didn't go well. but yeah, Jaehaerys planned to do this feast and whatnot, but unfortunately Jaehaerys' health got worse, as you can see. Since he got drunkard, he became more unstable as time went on. He eventually got cancer, which fucked him over. Now, I have used console commands to kill these characters off, because I want this Civil War to kick. This Civil War has been the only thing that's been keeping me interested in this series, I'm afraid. I mean, the other things I've enjoyed as well, but this is one of the main things that I've been gearing up towards for a while now. And if I didn't have this Civil War, I'd have lost interest straight away. Right. So Jaehaerys' health was starting to fail. He had cancer. He also had a fever, and the fever and coughing comes a bit later, and I'll explain that a bit later. But his mental state was horrific. Ever since Alicent went, it just got worse and worse. Athena, who was also who was basically around that point, essentially the only reason Jaehaerys hadn't killed himself at that point. Yeah, but his health was getting worse to the point where he eventually got very funny with Baelor. He felt as Baelor was too weak for the throne and couldn't be the king, and Jaehaerys was flipping out. And eventually he got to the point where Jaehaerys called a not really a great council to determine his heir, because Baelor had done nothing wrong really, and most of the lords of the realm knew that Jaehaerys was sort of losing it. They feared Aeron was getting worse. They feared that Aeron's reign was causing trouble, and Jaehaerys' reign basically confirmed even more problems. So, yeah. So Jaehaerys eventually called together a bunch of, like, smiths and labourers and whatnot, and essentially picked up Blackfire and buried it in stone. He put, like, fucking bricks and all sorts over it to basically cover Blackfire. What the hell is my cat doing? I've got a massive pile of Lego out because I'm sorting out my minifigures and all my sets and shit before I move house. I make it sound like it's gonna be soon, but it's not gonna be. It'll be a while till I move house. What are you doing, Bella? Okay, you're just sitting up on my cabinet in my wardrobe. Cool. My wardrobe has no doors, so that's why. At some point, I need to put the doors on the wardrobe, but that's a story for another time. So Jaehaerys basically got a load of bricks. Not him personally, but he basically got a load of bricks and steel and metal and shoved it all together. And basically, what the hell is she doing? Okay. And he got Silverwing to sort of melt it a bit, so it's so Blackfire essentially was sort of stuck in the metal, and it'd be impossible for anyone to really pull it out. So, and that was sort of the point. If you ever watched King Arthur and Sword of the Stone, then you'll sort of know where I'm going. And the Sword of the Stone, Blackfire was basically shoved in the stone to the point where it would be almost impossible for it to pull it out. Not almost. And Jaehaerys called together. This is sort of a mad way, really, but Jaehaerys called anyone with Targaryen descent to come to the capital, and whoever would pull out the sword, he would declare as the heir. So as you can imagine, most of the lords of, especially the Targaryen relatives, were fucking kind of like, oh, okay, shit, let's do this. And this would include only, like, Targaryen Valyrian descendants, not like, say, for example, Mega's husband. That wouldn't count, that'd be cheating. So, many of the lords came together, as you can imagine, and these are all people descent of Targaryen, so High Valyrian, bloodlines, whatnot. Oh, we've got the Sarn bloodline. Didn't know that. Cool. So, as you can imagine, Aeron volunteered. Baelor volunteered to try and defend his crown, which he did try, but unfortunately he was just not strong enough. As you would imagine, I'm looking on the wrong thing. As you would imagine, Aegon attempted to try and pull out the sword with his superior strength and whatnot, but even Aegon could not pull it out. And I'll explain why he's dead in a minute. Viserys even gave it a go, but he still failed miserably. Even Maegor, 10-year-old Maegor, tried to pull out the sword, but no hope for him at all. Corlys gave it a go, but failed. His sons never bothered, so he wouldn't allow his sons to be king. He wouldn't bow to his kids. Ray tried to attempt it, but failed miserably. Even Sir Daemon gave it a go, but again failed. Even some of the women in the family gave it a go on Viserys' side, but none of which were successful. And when he declared this, he said anyone of like Jaehaerys' sort of bloodline, so anyone that was not Jaehaerys, Daemon's Viserys' blood, anyone of Viserys' bloodline, not Viserys' bloodline, no, Balon the Brave, anyone of his descent of his bloodline with marriages and whatnot were eligible, essentially. So, where am I going? No, I was going to say I'm lost. I'm not lost. So, Rhaenyra's bloodline, who of course was dead at this point. Valyrian, I noticed, died a while ago. I think I mentioned that, didn't I? Most of his kids were all dead, so they've never had a chance. Solara, being quite a sturdy woman, Gave it a shot, but unfortunately was not able. I think her bloodline's about to die out the way it looks. Baelor, so the Bloodfires gave it a shot. Melees came down, but was no hope for him. Oh look, Baelor. Oh yeah, right, okay. I think no, Mud had died. I was gonna say Mud, but he's long dead. Lady Jewess decided to not go for the sword. She had no interest in being the queen, and wanted to remain with her family in the Riverlands, and that's what came of her. Moving on, the True Drakes, of course, gave it a go. Verano straight in there. Failed miserably, as did his brother, Verano, despite his reputation. Lofia Grolaf, Grolaf had no interest in the throne, so he didn't come south. The Ironborn, although you would have thought they would have been shunned when they arrived, but Germund, despite the reputation his family had, he gave it a go regardless. So German tried to pull out the sword, but again failed. Moving on a bit, round to the other side of the bloodline. Alicent, why am I saying Alicent? The same thing. They're all the same, but I guess Lena, but she didn't participate. Now Visenya's kids, who have a bit of an odd, dodgy claim because they're not in the line. Maegor gave it a shot, but failed. So Ryan gave it a shot, but also failed, and Harris and Vaegon, who aren't exactly the most strongest of people, failed as well. Yeah, so on the other side, Aegon Dimflame, who is... I have, modified people's traits and things like that to give a bit more of a story to them. Aegon Dimflame is actually stronger and a bit of a giant person. He's a bit like the Hodor. Bit based upon Hodor, I suppose, but him and Belen actually fell in love, and she fell in love with this giant of a man who basically is a protector, I think. So that's what I like for Aegon. Gave him Aegon Dimflame, as he is now known. Aegon gave it a shot, but despite being as strong as shit, he did make it move slightly, but he couldn't quite pull it out. Maybe he wasn't as smart enough. Aemon gave it a shot, so is his son Jaehaerys and Daenar, but again, failed. The Rogers, Daro came as well and gave it a go, but again, failed. Maegor, after all the candidates had failed, Maegor gave up, until Maegor put his hat in the ring and came before and said, I'm going to give it a go, and still failed, miserably. At that point, most of the lords and whatnot sort of just thought, fuck this. Aegon didn't give it a go. He was tempted, but Aegon remembered the reason he gave up the throne. He wasn't going to, try and take the throne back again. No, he wasn't doing that. Besides, Aegon was older than Jaehaerys, so he wasn't going to bother. Moving on to one particular event, which confirmed... Well, originally, when Aemon had his bastard children, they weren't really confirmed if they were legitimate Targaryens. It was rumoured that Rhae told everyone that they were Targaryens, and Rhae eventually got sent to the Sept by the new Lord Commander, dismissing the claims. So Rhae was sent as a silent sister. So eventually the two girls, so not Helena and Daenerys, they were too young, but there was one man, one boy, Osmond Breakbones. He came before the hello Bella. just walks across the keyboard. Okay. Oh, Bella, your leg is literally right into my... Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyway, sorry, Bella. Anyway, Osmond came before. No one knew who this kid was. He said he apparently was a Targaryen. Many people dismissed the idea of him being a Targaryen and whatnot, and said, no, he's not a Targaryen. Get him out. But Jaehaerys said... Jaehaerys was like, yeah, he's probably not a Targaryen. Send him out. Until Aeron said, hang on a minute. Give the boy a chance. He may yet prove us worthy. May yet prove himself worthy of holding the sword and wielding the sword and being in the air. So Osmond gave it a go. Now he didn't quite get the sword out, but he made it move, and it didn't quite come out, but he made the sword move upwards a bit. It wasn't quite enough to pull it out, but the fact that Osmond pulled it up, and yeah. Eventually Osmond was unsuccessful, but warned some peasant nobody challenged Osmond to a duel, saying he's not as strong. This is obviously a fraudulent affair. And Osmond punched him in the face, broke his nose and cheekbone. So Osmond, after that, gained the title of Osmond Breakbones. Now, he is also of Rey. Now, interestingly, you'll note, I'm going to have to go char info to show you. And Aemon, for some reason, obviously didn't say he was a Targaryen. Obviously, maybe Aemon was a bit embarrassed of it. Didn't say anything. So Aemon never actually declared this guy a full Targaryen, or even said he was his child. No doubt Rey felt pretty bad about that, but eventually they obviously rekindled when they had Helaena and Daenerys. So Osmond wasn't a named Targaryen, but it was still like a bastard. But with this in mind, Aeron investigated a little bit more about the fact that this boy who had come from nowhere suddenly almost took out the sword. Obviously, he was a Targaryen. Now, Blackfyre, you could say it's a bit like the Sword and the Stone. At least I'm going to call it like that anyway. Where Blackfyre sort of chooses the king, I suppose. It was such as Aegon IV when he handed to Daemon Blackfyre. It was the sort of, you were meant to be king and whatnot. And I feel as if Blackfyre has sort of a special... It's Valyrian, it's got some sort of magic in it and special runes. I feel as if Blackfyre, you should be... Blackfyre is almost a bit like the Sword and the Stone. To carry it and wield it, you have to be worthy in a way. But like a Mjolnir as well. But yeah. Aeron did some investigating and eventually came into contact with Rey, who was currently as Silent Sister. He allowed the meeting by the current Lord Commander at the time and the head of the sort of Silent Sisters in the Red Keep, and he met with Rey, and he spent much time with Rey and eventually becoming friends with the girl. No sort of like romantic interest at all. No. She is about 30 years old, but Aeron became quite interested in her. And Helaena and Daenerys, and eventually Rey revealed that Helaena and Daenerys were indeed the declared daughters of Aemon. Aemon foresaw a great tragedy, and this is one of the reasons he didn't name Osmond his legitimate son, and feared that Osmond would possibly, bit like what's a good example? He felt as if Osmond could possibly be a claimant and challenge the Iron Throne, and due to Osmond's unnatural strength and ability. So that's why Aemon never declared him a Targaryen. Although Aemon did watch over the boy, but he didn't want him to... He felt as if Osmond would be his own person, his own man. He didn't really want him to follow in the... He wanted to be a knight and do his own thing, maybe become part of the King's Guard, but... Aemon wanted him to be a normal kid. He didn't want him to be... Aemon wanted to train him and whatnot, and that's why he's a really good fighter. He also trained Helaena and Daenerys as well. Also, why they are good fighters as well. Now, keep in mind some of the traits and stuff I've added together. They're not now in the actual lore of this story. They're not going to be a formidable fighter right now, but in the actual story, eventually they will become that fighting skill level, and their traits will reflect that as time goes on. So yeah, so Aeron found this out a lot, and eventually decided to buy essentially Rey's freedom from as a Silent Sister. She's still dedicated to the throne, but he managed to convince the head mistress, I think, I'm not the head priest of the Red Keep, I suppose, to allow Rey to leave her Silent Sister to raise her children. He also, Aeron also mentioned that these children were indeed the children of Aemon, the former Lord Commander of the King's Guard, and expressed his right to train them, and that's what he did. Helaena got a... Oh shit, she's got a Valyrian steel sword. Oh, Oh, Aemon must have got it. He must have gone on like a quest or something and got the sword, or he picked it up from somewhere else. I don't know. Oh, that's weird. I didn't even notice that. Okay, cool. I saw that and thought, has he? What? But yeah, she's got a Valyrian steel sword. That's quite interesting. I didn't notice that at all, but I guess that's her. Yeah, he brought Rey's freedom, allowed her to return to his court and stepstones, and he also took Helaena and Daenerys to raise not really as his children, but as his wards and whatnot. He also took Osmond as well, despite the wishes of Aemon, and Rey couldn't leave Osmond in the Red Keep, so Aeron took it upon himself to take the boy and train him to be who he is. Eventually, Aegon didn't really have the consent of his father, but regardless, he felt as if, as the prince, he could do it, and also the quote-unquote king of the Stepstones. No, don't say that too loud. But he took Osmond as his ward and legitimized him. He also legitimized both Daenerys and Helena as legitimate Targaryens. Osmond, he followed through with his Aemon's and Rhae's original plan not to name Osmond a full-blooded Targaryen, but instead let Osmond choose, basically revealed to Osmond his true parentage, and let him take his own house. So House Darkfire, which is, I do quite like the sigil of this one. Purple dragon with like blue sort of flames and a red background. I quite like that. So House Darkfire. Over time, eventually Aeron would bring them over to court and whatnot, and eventually, when the Dragonstone Targaryens would come over to visit, I've gone out of that completely. Rhaenys formed quite a good bond, despite being a little cruel. She formed a strong bond with Osmond, almost to the point where it's clear that the two of them were infatuated with one another. Now, Aegon certainly didn't approve of this match, as he obvious reasons. But Viserys, Viserys was respected his sister quite a lot, and actually helped Rhaenys escape to the Stepstones with her true lover Osmond. This, of course, enraged Aegon even more, and Aegon and Viserys fell out immensely due to this. The fact that in Aegon's mind, his own son sold his own daughter off to the Stepstones to essentially in his mind, Aeron was a pirate. He sold him off to a pirate. So as you can imagine, Aegon was furious. Now back to the whole sword in the stone thing. Now Aeron came before the ceremony. I can't remember if Jaehaerys if actually went ahead and... Did I say? No, I don't think I did. Jaehaerys never went ahead and went for it. But he was tempted, but Baelor said, no, don't. He didn't want his son to involve himself too publicly. Now... Oh, I better turn Char info off. I was showing off the other bit. And also, one thing I noticed is that Aegon, all the kind... I think, has it... hang on. I don't know if I can show, but... All these guys, the Kind Horses family here, are all actually Aegon's kids. I noticed. So yeah, all the remaining living ones are all Targaryens actually. Hence the Valyrian features, which I didn't even notice until later on. She's actually married to Lord Germund, which is my cousin. May I remember the one that killed my aunt? Yeah. Yeah, Henley was with us for a long time now. Right, let's turn Char info off, shall we? So Aeron came before the Sword and Stone, and in sort of almost holy shit, he did it. He pulled the sword out of the stone, and at that moment was immediately declared the heir to the Iron Throne. Now, Aeron didn't want this. He wanted to prove himself capable, and Aeron was pushed and a bit sort of pushed by his father to do it, and many of the lords of the realm started chanting his name to do it, and so Aeron felt a bit of peer pressure. But regardless, Aeron did it anyway to prove to the lords that he could do it. And on that note, Aeron was proclaimed as as heir to the Iron Throne. Now, Aeron wasn't happy about this. Aeron met with his father for a while, and this is why partly he's stressed. He met with his father and said, "This is wrong. Baelor is the firstborn son. He is the rightful heir. Despite Baelor's kind-hearted nature, if you name me heir, there will be a rebellion. The sons of Baelor will not take lightly to this, and and the lords of the realm will think ill-kindly of the house for this." But Jaehaerys didn't care. He was the dragon. He didn't give a shit. He was cruel, stressed. He was depressed, drunken. He didn't give a shit. He was slightly mad as well, but he didn't care. Jaehaerys didn't care. He was saying Aeron would be the heir until Aeron was like, "This is wrong. Baelor should be the heir." And behind the closed door, Baelor was standing behind the door, and the door swung open, and Baelor came in to speak with his father. Now, Baelor and Jaehaerys, had always had a bit of a funny relationship, but this time, Baelor and Jaehaerys went off on each other, to the point where Aeron slowly but surely backed away and returned to his chambers, leaving the father and son to it. Baelor and Jaehaerys' argument and heated discussion got to the point of, well, almost no return. Baelor, keep in mind, was also slightly mad, so he wouldn't back down, And eventually it led to Baelor, and due to this heated argument, it was almost too much for Baelor, and Baelor had a heart attack. And judging by the chest pains, the stress and the infirmary, he had sort of a stroke/heart attack. Not really sure which one I've decided on really, but I guess you can sort of say both really. I guess sort of a, I guess it was, you can say it was a stroke/heart attack. It was sort of both, I suppose. And obviously this killed Baelor straight away. Jaehaerys was fucking. This drove Jaehaerys crazy to the point where Baelor. Jaehaerys didn't care that Baelor had died, but he almost did as well. Jaehaerys sort of. One minute he cared about Baelor dying, and one minute he just didn't care at all. And this is obviously pretty fucking horrific. Baelor was dead. the Baelor just died in front of the king, and all of a sudden the Red Keep was filled with gossip and everything about how Baelor died and whatnot. The Masons declared that he had some sort of heart attack and stroke, and that was it really for Baelor. Baelor was a goner at that point. Unfortunately, he will forever have that beard. But yeah, Baelor died, and this obviously sort of shocked the entire family. Jaehaerys was shocked into mental instability. Rhaena was very sad. Baelor was quite sad as well. Lysara was shocked. Daenerys was, as you can imagine, heartbroken and shattered to bits. Rhaenyra was very upset as well. Aeron was just in pieces. Aeron was just like, fuck. Aeron loved his brother, and Baelor and Aeron. Baelor had never hated Aeron for being the favorite child in Jaehaerys' mind, and even Baelor respected the fact that if Aeron was to be the king, Baelor said he would support him and whatnot. And to me, that was the best brother relationship I could never really form in CK2. And as you can imagine, Aeron was very upset when his brother died, and yeah. But Jaehaerys, and he spoke with Jaehaerys again, and Jaehaerys insisted that Aeron would be the heir, and eventually got to the point where Aeron was just like, this is fucked. Baelor has died. There's no way that I can't be, Aeron at that point refused to be the heir. There was no way he could be the heir after the death of his brother. It fucked and it shaped his entire family relationship to the point of almost no return. It's like a Daemon going away from Viserys. And Aeron was just like, this is crazy. And Aeron sought out help, some sort of guidance really, because he didn't know what the fuck to do. Aeron went out to the balcony near the Red Keep and just went to the gardens and just fucking sat there for a while and reminisced for ages and ages and ages. Now, keep in mind, his wife, Nessa Ray, was actually still in the stepzone because she is still currently pregnant. She's been pregnant during this whole fucking thing. It'd be a wonder if she even managed to keep the child. But we'll see what happens. He sought out the only person that could offer him proper guidance, and that would be Aegon. Aegon was probably the best person to talk to about these sort of matters, as Aegon was once the king. In my mind, my inspiration for Aegon these days is that he was sort of the Edward VIII of this scenario, where he was the king and then stepped down and abdicated somewhat. I guess he sort of did. He could have chose to become king after Aeron, but he chose to abdicate. And that's what he did. He let Aeron take the throne, and that was it, really. Aegon remained as he was, a friend, and just at peace, really. Aegon, due to the fact he was resurrected and favoured by R'hllor immensely, was one of the reasons he stayed alive till 86. But unfortunately, during this time, Aegon's health was starting to decline slightly. He was still depressed after the death of many of his children and all that. He never quite gotten over the whole Dance of Dragons that still lingered over him. But he wanted to make amends with the Targaryen of Dragonstone. He knew the feelings of Aegon and all that and the other family with the current Targaryens on the throne, and hoped to try and make amends, or at least make amends with that side of the family due to the whole what happened in the Dance of Dragons. I feel as if I've redeemed Aegon so much in this series. I do wonder what would happen had we just played as Aegon and not brought in Aeron, not essentially made Aeron at all. But I do like the way I've done Aegon. In my mind, this series, he's he's redeemed himself somewhat. It's difficult to say, but in my mind, in this series, I feel as if Aegon has redeemed himself as a happy and nice Targaryen, despite all that went on. His last ever kill was Nettles, 50 odd years, no, 40 years ago. So yeah, I feel as if Aegon has repented. He's had plenty of children. Yes, he's sort of slept around a bit, but Aegon in my mind has redeemed himself somewhat from all that went on during the Dance of Dragons. So Aeron sought out Aegon's mainly for advice, similar to how Prince Charles, now King Charles III, once sought out Edward VIII once. I can't remember when it was. It was during the 80s. During when he was deciding whether or not to marry Diana and whatnot and all that stuff. And you saw it quite well in The Crown. And Edward VIII was a bit of a very controversial figure. But I'm not going to say anything too much about the historical thing. But I do feel as if Aegon, I do think Edward VIII, despite mixing with the Nazis, which is fucking atrocious, despite mixing with the Nazis, I felt as if I could understand him. I'd feel as if Edward he married for love, and unfortunately that led to the monarchy was like, he had to abdicate and whatnot. He wasn't allowed to marry divorcees, so that was sort of the thing. The royal family is very strict back then. I mean, now Charles is now married Camilla back in 2005. So, and that she was a divorcee, and so is he. So obviously now, since then, of course, it has changed a lot. But back in 1936, it was very frowned upon, and that what led to Edward stepping down. And I don't really forgive him for with the involvement he had with Hitler and whatnot. But I think after that, he regretted it immensely after he found out. Because I feel as if, but again, didn't he? He did visit a concentration camp, didn't he? I feel as if the Nazis might have covered it up a bit and said, "Oh well, this is a camp to help and re-educate people," and probably glossed it up and said, "Oh, this is a really good thing," where in reality it wasn't. It was fucking horrendous, and they probably covered it up a bit and to make Edward think, "Oh, well, it's probably a good thing." In reality, it isn't, but they probably just didn't tell anyone the full story, as you'd expect. But yeah, but Aegon, who was unwell at the time, he wasn't really the best in health. He eventually sought out Aegon and eventually took a walk by the flower gardens. I can't remember if the gardens have a name in King's Landing, but whatever. They took a walk and spent many hours talking to each other. It's unknown, even though I'm playing this area, but it's unknown officially what Aeron and Aegon talked about. But afterwards, Aeron still knew that he wouldn't want to be king, and Aegon said, "You have a choice. You can choose to be the king, or you can choose to be not. Regardless, protect Jaehaerys, who was going to be the heir. Regardless, Jaehaerys would push him to be the heir, but Aegon said, you can, regardless, say you don't want to be the king and give it to Jaehaerys." And that's what Aeron does. Despite that, he did spent quite a long time with Aegon. He spent much time with Aegon. Aegon was one of his childhood companions and friends, and much older companion, of course, but he looked up to Aegon. I wouldn't say he looked up to Aegon, but he felt as if Aegon was more of a father figure than his own father, really. Jaehaerys and Aeron's relationship, but it was strong in the early years, but as time went on, it faded away. And Aegon was sort of that almost grandfather-like figure, I suppose. So Aegon and Aeron decided to go on a ride on Cannibal and fly out. They went for a fly and decided to fly not just out to the Narrow Sea, but they decided to fly all across the world and saw fucking everything. And this is amazing, as you can imagine, for Aeron, who had only really spent much of his time in Westeros and maybe some time. But again, Aeron did travel the world, didn't he? That's how he sort of no, not Aeron. Was it Aeron? Was it Jaehaerys? Because it was Jaehaerys, isn't it? Because Aeron is a legitimized bastard. And Aeron also then spent time in the Three Daughters, which is how he met his wife, who is, I suppose, the queen at the moment. And Aeron, this journey, as you can imagine, was amazing. He took he went. So how this journey went is basically they went from this down here past Dragonstone and whatnot, and Aegon planned to come back to Dragonstone, but he wanted to do one last sort of trip around the globe somewhat, I guess. But so their dragon adventure started up. They went past the Vale. They went upwards to north, all the way to the wall. Didn't quite go beyond the wall as the snow and wind storm was a bit too much. So they went round here, went back down the other side of the north, past the Iron Isles, past Castle Rock, past the Shield Isles, past Old Town, have a nice look as they went past, then past the Arbor, past Starfall, and all the way around past Dawn. Then they went down towards the Summer Islands to keep an eye on the ancient Summer Island structures and whatnot. The capital being Stonehead at this time, which is a bit of an odd place for a capital, really, but there you go. And then going past all the Summer Islands and whatnot, I think the Empire is literally just, like, not very well. The kingdom itself is much stronger, or the princedom, I suppose. They went through the Summer Islands, they went past the Sophorios, Bassis Isles. Aegon told Aeron much tales of the Targaryen Valyrian history and whatnot as they were riding along the dragon. Spoke much about the dragon that went south with a person named, who was, I think, a Valyrian house known as Valyris, which is a house I think that Smee and Sol both sort of had ideas for the series and both executed them in the old days, about 5 or so years ago. You won't see that videos nowadays. Have been private now. They're just way too old to be showed in this channel. Good God. But yeah, he told Aeron about that. I keep getting the names wrong because they're sounding so similar. It's just confusing the shit out of me. So they went across all the way around here. So they went past they went up past Slaver's Bay, had a look around here, looked around the ruins of Old Valyria, told many tales of Old Valyria, went over to Calf, past Calf, had a little look down this area, went across the sea, Jade Sea towards the Shy, showing off the Dark Lands over there. They even went up this way, past Leng, which is actually now part of YT. That's interesting. Went past YT and also ventured into Carcosa to explore in there. Giving the lords and whatnot in that area something to be feared of, definitely. So after that, they eventually travelled further north to Nefer, through all the Joggers and the Highlands, past the Thousand Islands, round this way, up past Ibn, and then, of course, kept going this way, past the old lands of, I think they're all Dothraki now? No, the Sarnorians are still holding out here. Past the Sarnor lands, he also had a little venture around the 3 cities, went to Cahor first, Norvos, Lys, Lorath, Bravos, Pentos, around the lands of the, oh, that's interesting, around the Rhoynar Lake, noticing that this guy who was Rhoynarians are sort of taking over again. That's interesting. That's quite interesting. The Rhoynar, is that like an event maybe? Oh, it is. Oh, an event's kicked off, like a 44,000. I've never seen that before. That's kind of cool. Interesting. They seem to be attacking Cahor. So went past Cahor, went past the mess that is Volantis at the moment, went back up towards Lys, Mir, Tarosh, and the capital of Chios right now. And of course, around this area is called. We also had a little exploration around Sunspear, Stormlands, and that was it. They didn't bother going to Harrenhal. There was no point going there. It's a smoking ruin. So as they stopped up, came towards Dragonstone, a storm hit them in the skies, and some say Aeron reckons there was a kraken that came out of the water, but this sort of caused the trouble at sea to the point where the lightning almost struck Cannibal, and Cannibal just about dodged it in time. Cannibal is a lot more flexible than I'd say that his personal combat skill is Ravenous, Crazed. I think Ravenous is... Wait, was Ravenous? So he's kind of bigger, I suppose, but he's more flexible because his personal combat skill. Whereas Silverwing has slightly lost a bit of personal combat skill because he's more... Silverwing is more like big and sort of bigger dragon, not much of a best dragon for fighting, really, but still the strongest and a bit like Vhagar and House of Dragon. Whereas Cannibal is quite an older dragon, but more sort of flexible, bit like Caraxes. So yeah, Cannibal just about dodge it, but as they were flying in, they had to land at Dragonstone. The storm was really bad, and Aegon's condition got slightly worse after all the flying and the Tyran flying he had to do. And eventually they land at Dragonstone. Now, Aegon was too unwell to go anywhere else, and he wanted to stay at Dragonstone. He felt as if I think Aegon was born in King's Landing, but he felt as if Dragonstone was the place to die. So he was administered to Dragonstone. Aegon at this time, didn't really want to didn't want to be responsible for the death of the Aegon, the prince, or whatnot, any of that stuff. So Aegon, for the time being, played his hand. And Aegon escorted the other Aegon in, and treated him with a maester and tried to see if he was well. Aegon refused and said like there was no saving him and whatnot, but Aegon refused and said he'd help him out anyway. You know, you're still my blood and whatnot. Aegon sort of wanted Aeron to leave. Older Aegon, but let me just go to him actually. Older Aegon, I've lost him. Hang on. Where is it? There it is. Older Aegon felt a troubling disturbance. A disturbance in the Force. He felt a troubling disturbance in Dragonstone and urged Aeron to leave and return to King's. He felt as if something was happening in King's Landing, and felt as if it was time for Aeron to go. And Aegon was right, and I'll explain it later. And basically, Aegon convinced some sort of cannibal to return Aeron home. He used a bit of like singing to cannibal. Even though Aegon's condition was bad, he still managed to sing to cannibal, and cannibal understood and felt, and so almost Aegon sort of passed his sort of taming ability on to cannibal onto Aeron, and pushed for Aeron to return home, and cannibal allowed Aeron to ride him home, and cannibal and Aeron's bond, as you can imagine, was fairly strong. So Aegon eventually at Dragonstone, as Aeron flew off for the last time, waving goodbye. Aegon's condition over the next couple of days got slightly worse, to the point where Aegon was very close to dying. Sorry. So go back to Aegon, thank you. So Aegon's condition went well, and to the point when the maces and whatnot said he must stay in bed at all times. But Aegon didn't quite plan on dying in bed. He planned dying somewhere more magnanimous, I suppose. Aegon got out of bed. He snuck out with his stick and whatnot. Didn't have a walking frame. I don't mean they had walking frames in those days. He snuck out with a stick and made his way down and whatnot. He waited for guards to move out of the way, and almost an Assassin's Creed moment. He waited for them to move, and eventually made his way out into the sort of dragon pit area where most of the dragons are housed in Dragonstone. Although most of them nowadays are in King's Landing. However, other Aegon's dragon was of course there, and a few others around the area. And Aegon came upon. Let me find him. I need to actually, yeah. Came upon Firestorm, which was Aegon, the other Aegon's dragon, and Firestorm was there, and now, Aegon didn't quite plan on dying out in pain and whatnot, and Aegon sort of stood by the sort of I'm pretty sure the volcano isn't active, is it? No. So he stood by the volcano and asked Firestorm to burn him. Jaehaerys, similar to what Laena did with Vhagar when she was about to die from pregnancy and whatnot. And he convinced Firestorm. Firestorm was a bit funny and was like, "Why would I burn some random guy that's just told me to burn him?" But he recognised Aegon's pain and severe old age and the fact that he was dying. And Firestorm and Aegon's almost didn't quite plead, but he told Firestorm, "I'm ready, do it," and then just said Jaehaerys multiple times, and eventually Firestorm just went for it and set him on fire, and eventually, and Aegon's corpse fell into the mountain top, I suppose. But the volcano isn't active, so there's no like lava and magma. So he would have just fallen into the volcano and just, well, in a similar notion to how Smeagol and Gollum fell into the volcano of Mount Doom. I guess you can say, for the sake of this story, I'll say that Aegon fell into the volcano after Firestorm had set him alight. And Aegon left a few notes and stuff on his bedchamber before he died and said, "I'm going now. Goodbye," and basically said, "You'll find my remains in the volcano or perhaps in Firestorm." He planned all along that he was going to die by a dragon and his remains would be cremated somewhat in the volcano. And in his will, he bestowed as a sort of he did have some time to talk to Viserys and Aegon and whatnot and talk about and explain his wrongdoings or the death of their grandparents or grandparents and what, or great grandparents, I suppose. Oh no, I guess grandparents. I guess somewhat. Yeah, I know. I'm looking at it as this from Aeron's perspective, but his grandparents and apologise for what he did for making Viserys' job harder and all that, and apologise and whatnot. And in his will, he bestowed Dark Sister upon to Aegon as sort of a this side of the family is worthy to hold the sword and whatnot, and he bestowed Dark Sister to Aegon, and felt as if Aegon was right for the throne, right to carry the sword anyway, not so right for the throne. He also told Aegon some wisdom about remaining at Dragonstone. Do not involve yourself with the succession and the king and the Iron Throne. And from experience, Aegon told other Aegon, this Aegon, that the throne is a pointless trifle, and the Iron Throne is one of the most dangerous seats in the realm. And he almost said it's a power that men should never trifle with. Aegon, in his dying days, almost had some sort of, I guess, almost wonder if maybe, possibly, the Targaryens conquering Westeros with Aegon the Conqueror was a bad idea and caused so much bloodshed and whatnot. Maybe the Targaryens should have remained on Dragonstone in peace, but that was not to be. So maybe Aegon, in a way, and I mean older Aegon, sort of felt as if maybe it was better for the Targaryens to not conquer Westeros, but what is done is done. He tried to pass on his words of wisdom to Aegon the Third. Is it Aegon the Third? Yeah, Aegon the Third. But unfortunately, Aegon didn't listen, as you can see, and yeah, obviously it was confirmed that Aegon had indeed died, and a small service was held in King's Landing with Aemon and some of the other relatives attended the service in Dragonstone, or Dragonstone, I suppose. That's where he died. So a small service was held there, and also this gave a chance for Aegon to have some more words with his true Drake and Aemon, who Aemon resented his father, had no interest in him at all. So yeah, he felt as if Aemon had lived too long and that Aemon deserved Cannibal. Unfortunately, Aemon asked where Cannibal had gone, and Aegon the Third had told them that Cannibal had returned to the Red Keep, carrying along Aeron. Now, when Aeron returned, the realm was in a bit of a state. Jaehaerys' health had gotten worse and worse to the point where he had a fever, he had coughing fits, his cancer had gotten worse, he was going mad. Many of the Maces suggested that possibly some body parts might have to be cut off for him to have any chance of surviving. He was still drinking, despite the Maces tried to stop him, get him away from the drink. It still didn't quite work. At the end of the day, King Jaehaerys was the king, and did as he liked, really. He was still stressed and depressed, but regardless, he was still in a horrific state. The realm at that point was, well, no one could really control the realm. No one was of any really authority could really take charge. Daenerys tried to take charge almost to try and help her son into the reign. She knew Jaehaerys was too young for the throne, and Jaehaerys would struggle. She hoped that Aeron would indeed return. Some of the other lords around tried to get involved, although it was slightly difficult. Joyce tried to involve herself slightly. The other lords of the realm involved themselves. The Rhaenyras, the Sunderlands also got involved. The Targaryens of the North as well. Even the Ironborn stuck themselves in the bit as well. But yeah, this happened at a pretty shit time. And Aeron returned at the very right time. Aeron returned at a time where Jaehaerys was, and the realm was in a bit of a fucking state. Jaehaerys was dying and fucking the realm, and there was no one leading the realm. Aeron took it upon himself to pull the realm together and said, "Look, let's go with it. Let's try and pull this together." Jaehaerys is dying and whatnot. Many of the lords tried out for Aeron to become the heir. The realm was not prepared for a child king of all people, especially a 13-year-old boy to take the Iron Throne at such a precarious state, with the True Drakes and other Targaryens vying for the control and whatnot, and other factions wishing to leave the independent, trying to find their own independence. Them being the wildlings beyond the wall and whatnot. Aeron returned and and told the lords he would not be king. He had no desire to be king, and no interest to be king, and no want to be king. Eventually, his mother pulled him aside and said, "It's not for your. It's not about your wants and wishes. It is your duty to become the king. You are declared the heir. Fulfill your duty and whatnot." But Aeron again refused. He wouldn't be bossed around by his own mother. He was like, "No, I don't want to be king, and I will not be the king." Aeron instead offered that he would be offered stand as the regent of the realm and Lord Protector, and tutor Jaehaerys to be given all the strength and knowledge he needed to be the king. Aeron offered to do that at the very least. He felt as if he had some sort of duty. Aeron wasn't really the man suited for the role as king or any kind of command or leadership, but regardless, he offered to tutor Jaehaerys regardless. But yeah, so he tutored Jaehaerys, and eventually Jaehaerys' condition got worse and worse. Somehow, some of the food he ate, it gave him food poisoning, and it happened to get him out of bed to vomit and sort out his diarrhea and whatnot, but the food poisoning wouldn't go away. The fever kept carrying on. The cough got worse and worse, to the point where blood was being shown coming out of his mouth and whatnot. It was a horrific state. Some of the lords pondered if he was coughing up parts of his own lungs and whatnot, as the coughs were so horrific. The cancer had gotten much worse. Madness had driven him to the insane. Jaehaerys was dying. And Aeron tried to see his father one last time, and it just wasn't possible. He couldn't have Aeron wanted to have at least one last moment with his father to try and to try something, but Jaehaerys was just not. He wasn't in the state to the point where Aeron just couldn't do anything. He had to stand by and watch his father go through this immense pain to the point where Aeron just couldn't do anything. Aeron attempted to pull out Blackfire, which was given to Aeron now, and Aeron kept hold of it. But Aeron planned to bestow it to Jaehaerys. In his dying breath, Jaehaerys muttered something about the rightful king, Aeron, and even on his dying breath, he wished for Aeron to become the king, and he is the rightful king. He is the one to protect the realm, and Jaehaerys said something most strange. Perhaps he was dreaming, but Jaehaerys pointed to a threat. He pointed to that one day there must be a king strong enough to unite the realm and defend the realm against the threat from the west. He felt he in some sort of rambling, and obviously this wasn't entirely exactly word for word, but Jaehaerys mentioned something about the Summer Island invasion. The sort of the Starks of the West have from Bran the Shipwright coming from the west with a grand army, big empire to conquer the world, and there must be a Targaryen to stop it. And he also remembered mutterings about the War for the Dawn and Beyond the Wall, and the White Walkers would one day come and take the world and whatnot, and all that. And obviously this has all been set up by the Aeron long ago, and Jaehaerys had remembered it, and it's on his dying breath, and he knew Aeron was the king to unite the realm against his coming invasion and whatnot, and you'll see how that happens when the time comes, of course. But yeah, Jaehaerys' condition, and after some days and some weeks, Jaehaerys still wouldn't die and continue, and his pain only got worse and worse and worse, to the point where Jaehaerys wouldn't die, but he'd just suffer and suffer and suffer. Maybe it's all the sins for all the stuff that he'd done and whatnot, and all the people he killed to a dragon and fed to his dragon and strangled to death and gored to death by a boar and killed an elaborate hunt. So maybe it all came back on him in the end. Until when, under the cover of darkness, Lady Taena slipped into Jaehaerys' bedside, and Taena loved Jaehaerys, and she knew at this stage she loved Jaehaerys to death, but she just knew that there was just no way she couldn't bear for a husband to go through this pain longer, and so slipped in moon tea, not moon tea, what's it called? Milk of the Poppy, and obscene amount of Milk of the Poppy, and that eventually that did the job, and Jaehaerys in the coming hours and overnight passed peacefully, muttering, and Taena remained with him the whole night and muttered, and he tried to speak with Taena. It's a bit like how Viserys died in House of Dragon, muttering no more pain and no more, and said Taena's name, and also said Alicent's name as well, which I don't know if Taena was too pleased with that, but he said that as well. He also muttered out the words of his children, Lysara, Baelor, Rhaena, Baelor, Daenerys, Rhaenyra, Aerion, the rightful king, even on his dying breath, the rightful king. And then he said his grandchildren, Allard, Eric, and all that. Even the ones he didn't see much of, he remembered all their names. And eventually he said, no more pain, and eventually passed away. Bit of a sad way to go for Jaehaerys. I know I spent an hour going and explaining this, but I honestly think that people probably do actually like this explanation and story building. I haven't seen a single Season 2 series where people spent quite a lot of time going through it, and maybe people are better at going through the story and maybe going through it a bit quicker than I do, but I feel I like to make a story. At some point, I would love to write a proper fan fiction, because CK2 is great, but there's only so much you can do with the limitations of the game, and I'd love to make a full-fledged fan fiction about, maybe based upon this story, because in some years later on, I could make a better story of this Targaryen Dynasty and maybe spruce it up a bit, maybe follow this history, but make it a little different. I could even do fan fictions of other Lord of the Rings, stuff like that. And I really want to. It's just finding time, unfortunately. But I think in later life and later, I'm not getting any younger. But in later life, I would definitely like to sit down someday and write some fan fictions, and maybe at some point, actually narrate them for YouTube, narrate out a chapter or something and talk about it, and maybe talk a little bit about a review and whatnot, and talk a bit about the books and stuff like that and whatnot. I doubt I'd ever publish them, but they'll definitely be on fanfiction.net, and I probably will narrate them, make some videos out of them and whatnot. So yeah. But yes, Taena did in a way kill Jaehaerys, but at that point she was putting him out of his misery. She hid the evidence and whatnot and disposed of the evidence and whatnot, and Aerion slipped in and realised Taena had definitely killed him. But Aerion was happy and almost glad that Jaehaerys had passed away peacefully in a much better state than he was not long ago. But yeah, so yeah, this Aerion was approached to be king, but again Aerion said no, and the throne immediately passed to King Jaehaerys III. Many started to call him the Young Dragon and whatnot, and eventually Aerion presented him with Blackfire and said, "This is a sword of kings." Did he say anything else about Blackfire? He said, "Blackfire is one of the 2 Valyrian steel swords the Targaryens brought from Dragonstone of the Doom, making it one of the most prized possessions of the Targaryen families." Targaryen families? Only one of them. Well, I guess there's cadet branches, I suppose, with Dragonstone Targaryens and North Targaryens and True Drakes and whatnot. But yeah, Jaehaerys was the king. He was King Jaehaerys III. And at that point, Aerion guided him and stood as Lord Protector and Regent and his educator, I suppose, and whatnot. Daenerys, of course, stood alongside Aerion and helped Aerion alongside with ruling and whatnot. This wasn't really what they planned. Taena as well, Jaehaerys, Aerion's mother, also stood with her superior knowledge and older age. She helped and did her best to help the realm. And for a time, the stability of the realm was pretty secure. It was very secure, and until the Dark Times, before the other Targaryens decide to enact their master plan. Now, and that is where I shall leave you for today's episode. Now, I'm sorry it's just been an entire video of me going through the entire story of the realm and story of the story that led up to this moment and led up to just before. I know many of you are like, oh, just do the war, just do the war. But I feel as if I need to go through and explain things. I need to explain the story and whatnot, because otherwise people won't understand it. It would just be pointless me going, oh, by the way, so we started a rebellion now, and I just don't continue to explain anything. So I think it's just wise me going through it. I may be late for work tomorrow. I may wake up late for work, but this is on my mind right now, and I need to talk about it now before I forget about it, because it's going to happen. Because I'll go to work tomorrow, come back, and I would have forgotten half of the things I planned to spruce out in this story and whatnot. So, yeah. But that is for this episode. Next episode, we will carry on with the final part of the story, and hopefully we will actually get a bit of action in before I head to bed. But anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and farewell.